Welcome to my new show, the Dr. Gerald Fishkin Show. Well, I'm Dr. Gerald Fishkin. My goal is to bring the consulting room to your living room. Your feedback will help make this show a show not for me, but for you. So sit back, relax, and let's jump in. My in-studio guest today is Dr. Kingston Levin, physicist and author, and I might say Renaissance man as well. A little history about Dr. Levin. He was born and grew up in Vermont with many winters spent in Florida as a child. As a teenager, he wrote poetry, served as a lifeguard, and played football. He currently enjoys sailing, exploring underwater caves, snorkeling, writing science fiction, and other pursuits. After working on the Apollo and Mars projects, he decided to return to school to study under the Nobel laureate Paul Dirac, obtaining his PhD in quantum mechanics from the University of Miami in 1971. Then, Dr. Levin founded two companies and served as science advisor to then-President Gerald Ford. Dr. Levin has over 44 articles published in the scientific literature and was awarded over 32 United States patents. Amazing, amazing. Dr. Levin's foray into the world of science fiction has resulted in his first book, 30th Century Escape, which is part of a trilogy. This is his book, and it's the winner of the 2017 Irwin Literature Award from the Book Publicists of Southern California. It is my absolute pleasure to present Dr. Kingston Levin. Good morning.
Good morning.
I'm glad you made it.
Well, thank you.
So, you wrote a book about somebody living 900 years from now.
Yes.
All right. It's hard enough living in the now.
Yes.
Tell us about the 900 years, and tell us a little bit about your book.
Okay.
And the protagonist. You've sent me some great information, but I want our people to know
Sure.
all about this book.
Well, her name is Jennifer,
Okay.
and she's kind of burned out because she's been an undercover agent for a secret society of scientists who are combating the Syndos, who have a tendency to want to take human rights away from the humans who made them. And unfortunately, there was this mistake in their DNA. But one of her grandfather actually developed a virus which will cure that mistake and not hurt them. But they have since upgraded their immune system. It kills the virus. So they have to go back in time to fix it. And Jennifer is, she's doing a lot of different things. But she is an undercover agent, and she's in deep cover, and she has a very close relationship with a senator who's a Syndo.
Now, what is a Syndo?
A Syndo is a genetically altered human in the embryo stage. They do genetic engineering. For example, there's a bacteria that is able to against radiation, it's able to repair its own chromosomes that get damaged. They use that gene to upgrade the embryo, and they also upgrade their strength, upgrade their speed, and upgrade a number of other things. And the people were developed in the 27th century, the Syndos, in order to settle planets on Tau Ceti and a few other nearby solar systems. Maybe there's 150 years to get there and things like that. So the lifespan of the average human at that time is 800 years.
This is 900 years from now,
in the future, right?
Okay. So you're going to live 800 years.
We're going to live 800 years.
It's hard enough living like 75 years.
Well,
80
I don't
years.
know. It's pretty. I'm not willing to give it up yet, and I'm 76. So I want to live longer, and people want to live longer, and there are little symbiotes. They're little nanotechnology that take the chromosome. There's a thing on your chromosome that if you measure it, it wears out. And that's your lifespan.
Okay.
But if you have symbiotes to repair it, your lifespan can be significantly larger.
Where do I buy one?
Well, you got to wait till 900 years or 700 years in the future. And gradually they learn how to do this. And they also do some genetic engineering so that you would improve your organs.
Your immune system, your organs. Yeah.
But eventually those organs have to be replaced. And by the 30th century, they've been doing it for several hundred years already. There's a company here in San Diego, well, Southern California, that is working on 3D printers in order to make your organs.
So we can make me an organ using a 3D printer out of plastic?
Not out of plastic, out of living systems.
Really?
Yeah.
Living material.
They use stem cells. Mm-hmm.
Isn't that amazing?
Yeah.
So, Mark, okay, so this gal is under deep cover.
Yeah.
Okay.
And she's burned out.
And she's burned out.
Her.
Do they have psychologists in those days?
Yeah.
3,000?
They do. They do. And she needs help, but she doesn't go for it right at the moment because she's in combat situation. She's under attack, although she kind of planned this. She's a very smart lady, great brains, and she planned to go to this place that once had nuclear weapons there because she's going to blow off a nuclear weapon to hide the time machine.
That allowed her to
get to the 27th century. Doesn't want them to know because she knows they'll find a time machine and they'll come get her and they'll stop the mission. But so she's very smart. So everybody else thinks that she's going to commit suicide because she's trapped, and she had said and put signals out that that's what they were going to do. They were going to make a mass protest because they're taking away their rights. And she found out that there's a plan to they're making this chemical, there's already manufacturing it. If you put it in the water supply, humans will become sterile. That won't affect Sindos. It's genetic warfare, okay? And they're all going to die out because they're going to get sterile. And that's the Sindo plan. They've started to build the manufacturing plant, but they haven't implemented it yet.
Okay.
So she gets through the senator who has access to all this data. She gets into his data by using some nanotechnology that she places there because she visits the house every couple of times a year for her son's birthday party and things like that.
So they kind of live semi-normal life.
They live semi-normal life, yeah. And but she's under a lot of stress because her lover, they never have made children, and she, of course, wants children very badly, was assassinated using laser weapons. And his brains went all over her. So it was a pretty trauma. And so
traumatic.
That's why she's burned out. Yeah, traumatic impact of her loss of this one man, the only man she ever loved. Okay, so she's started, she was his, Sexton Ho was her lover, was the professor, her professor in physics that she took when she was in college. And then she joined the secret society because she was a descendant of one of the people her grandfather was involved. And she's ready to complete the mission, to go back in time. That was what her lover wanted to do, to correct the problem. And so this is what's called the diversion point, where they go back to the 27th century. And under fire, where they're dropping large they know they're going to set off atomic bombs, so there's entrances to this and exits to the caves. The Sundos surround it. Of course, she lets them do that because they think they're going to exterminate them. We're going to commit suicide anyway, so what's the big deal? So they seal all the tunnels with large disruptors, which are like sound weapons that vibrate things and knock down the mountain a little bit. The underwater mountain. It's an atoll. It's a pretty large atoll, so it's a big mountain. And at the top, there's a little rim, and that's what they call an atoll. The center sinks, so there's a lagoon in the center. This is a gal who, in normal society, even of the 30th century, she's exceptional. Okay, when she was 12 years old, she was a gymnast. and she left that because her father was a veterinarian, her mother was a wildlife expert who was in Canada, and the Laurentian Mountains, there's a beautiful national park there, and there's like 800 to 900 lakes, all connected with rivers and things like that. Yeah, it's a beautiful national park, Laurentian National Park. And it has a French name also, but I don't pronounce French very well. So anyway, she's French Canadian, and she immigrates to Australia. Then Australia is the #1 GNP, #1 science, #1 in arts.
Australia.
Amazing. It becomes the America of the future.
Really?
Yeah.
What happened to America?
Well, they had some problems and they got set back a little bit. They're #4, but they're not out of they're not out of it. You know. Okay. But we're in a period of time where climate change is the climate change is the problem. They're approaching ice age. So northern Canada is getting much colder weather. It's difficult to grow crops there. So they see this eventually in another few thousand years, another 3,000 years, ice will be 2 miles thick over Canada.
Whoa. What about global warming?
Yeah.
How do you factor that in?
Well, global warming only lasts for so long. And then there's the ice age. Okay. You know, we have cycles of the last several million years. Every 110 or 115,000 years, we have a change. It's due to the orbits. There's a guy named, a mathematician actually, named Minkowski. He's Serbian, and he calculated this all out with no computers.
Amazing.
Yeah. He was absolutely amazing. So this is fantastic. So we have cycles, and so eventually we're going to get certain warm. In fact, last cycle the oceans were 5 meters higher, the oceans, than they were now.
So we're not talking about your book right now. We're talking about reality.
We're talking about reality.
Okay.
We're likely to have our oceans come 5 meters higher. And we're going to have a lot of cities that are going to have problems.
Is that because of the global warming and the ice
melting? Because of global warming,
yeah.
Okay. But eventually, that's going to happen, but eventually we're going to get global cooling.
Okay.
And that's due to the orbit. When the orbit gets way out, even though we're not going to be as bad as it would be without the extra CO2.
Okay.
But there was a time 600 million years ago when the Earth was a snowball. It was frozen everywhere, even the equator. Everything was frozen. And CO2 came out of volcanoes and broke through the ice, and warming started. Up. And then we got very warm, and we had dinosaurs at the poles. So climate changes, and it gets warmer. It also gets colder.
Wow.
And you get due to the orbits, the very long cycle things, 100,000-year orbits changes. So we'll have ice for 2 miles thick over places like Cleveland, Ohio.
Wow.
Yeah. Chicago.
Yeah.
Yeah, 2 miles thick.
Amazing.
Just north of New York City, Long Island was a terminal marine, which means that's where the border line of the ice was, and it melted there, and it dropped all the things, and that's Long Island.
Wow. Yeah. So we got away from your book a little bit.
A little bit.
We don't want to give the ending away.
No.
We want to encourage people to read it.
Yes.
Look around you. Everyone you see shares a deep and terrible secret that no one ever talks about. It is, in fact, one of the best kept secrets of all time, as universal and natural as the air we breathe, and just as pervasive. No one is immune to it. Look inside yourself. We listen to it instinctively, hold it closely, impetuously, and follow it without question every moment of our lives. The secret is our inner voice, the self-talk, the primal and silent internal communication that form alongside our psyche, feeding us constant messages that control our behavior. We hear it, but we can never see or feel or detect it in any other way. If you'd like to learn more about the relationship of early life abuse, trauma, neglect, violence, and its relationship to addiction, please pick up a copy of my new book, The Science of Shame and Its Treatment, available at a bookstore or online. Thank you very much.
Addiction is the greatest public health crisis of our time, and the #1 killer of young people in America today. At Beginnings Treatment Centers, we offer safe, modern, effective treatment for substance abuse and addiction. Minutes from the beach in beautiful Orange County, California, Beginnings offers comfortable surroundings, private chefs, and a dedicated clinical staff. Beginnings makes recovery possible for you and for your loved ones. Don't wait until it's too late. Call 800-387-6907 right now for a free confidential assessment.
I think I want to ask you to tell our people out there, because you are so fascinating in the talks that we've had prior to our taping today, your history, who you are, what it informed you to be Mark, to be you.
Yeah. Well, I was very lucky that my mother was a poet, my grandmother was a journalist, and later an editor of Vermont Life, and they encouraged me to write. I wrote poetry when I was 15, maybe even 14. I first published at 14. So I did, I love poetry, and I read my mother's poetry, and I was influenced. But I was also interested in journalism at that time. But I made a decision, I think, that to study science. And it's just because I got very curious. My senior year, I had this great science teacher. His name was Buck, Mr. Buck. And I had a little lab in my basement, okay? And we were working on rockets, too. In fact, we won the state rocket championship. And
You never blew anything up on it.
well, I did a few times. Yeah, I did. But anyway, he was my mentor and helped me. My job, everybody had a job, okay? Somebody had nose cones, somebody had relays and electronics.
Okay.
And my
group effort.
It's group effort. And my job was to put together the rocket motor, okay? And I chose to use the early stage. We used what's called rocket candy, sugar and perchlorate, ammonium perchlorate and sugar. And it's really tricky making it, but you have to melt it all, and then you let it harden. When it's in the hot stage, you got to make sure you don't overheat it or it blows up.
It blows up, yeah.
And I had a couple blow up, but I only made real small ones. But when I made the big one, we had a 6-foot rocket. I was really careful. And then I went with ammonium perchlorate and a butyl rubber. It's like an eraser. So you put it in ammonium perchlorate in the eraser, use 20% of the butyl rubber. And then it's much safer because the butyl rubber melts, it's a liquid, and then it hardens. By heating it, you harden it. So you don't have to heat it that much, and so it's much safer. So I did that.
At 15, you're a rocket scientist.
Yeah, I'm 16, I guess,
16.
when I actually,
Okay.
yeah. When I was a senior, I think I was 17. So we went to Virginia for the national champions. There's a place out there where there's, it's a military base, and they had the national championship there. We went, and we had a bad time because our rocket went up. We had 2 stages and came straight down. The switch didn't work, the mercury switch. That was my fault. The motor worked fine, but it went straight down into the ground, like 6 feet in the ground. Yeah, so it was a little bit scary, but we were kind of disqualified for the competition because it didn't work. Yeah, but anyway, that was my senior experience when I was about 17 years old, and it was in this. It was in the summer, actually, June. Yeah, and it was hot and warm,
And you were that kid who actually lived in both sides of your brain. The
Yeah.
creative side on the right and the linear, technical, theoretical stuff on the left. Yeah?
Yeah, but I wasn't that great at it till I got to college. Things got easier for me when I went to college, and then when I went to graduate school, they got even easier. So, because I absorbed it better, because I was interested. It was all a matter of Mr. Buck getting me interested in science, giving me a project, and helping me make that project happen.
Was he like a mentor to you?
He was a mentor, yeah. Without him, I probably would have gone a different way, would have become a journalist or something. He got me really interested in doing experiments and engineering. So, I began to be more applied oriented.
What was the special relationship you had with this man that you didn't have, let's say, with your father, who might have
My
been?
father died. He was kind of almost like a father to me. He gave me a lot of advice. Said, you can rockets. This is what's happening. Aerospace is growing. They need more aerospace engineers.
Right.
You ought to go to work for Boeing. So I went to work for Boeing.
How old were you when your dad died?
He died in 1947. I was 6 years old.
Wow.
Yeah,
Did your mother remarry?
she did. Yeah. So I had a pretty good life. I mean, my father was pretty well to do. He left enough money. So
Your
we didn't
father
have-
was a doctor?
He was a doctor and an investor.
Uh-huh.
He invested in some real estate. He did okay. So yeah, he was lucky. But because we had a house in Florida and a house here, and then he had some other real estate that he had for business. He had an office building. Yeah. And eventually my mother sold it. It took good rent for a while. It took rent. Office buildings are very good to invest in, especially for medical people, because they always tend to grow. And when you get one doctor in, pretty soon he brings in a partner who's younger and brings another partner, so he doesn't have to do as much work, and so they can rotate. In those days, doctors did house calls. So it became very, if they call you on a weekend when you're out, somebody else can handle it. So having these kind of partnerships were very useful, became very useful. We didn't have the kind of organization where everybody specialized. So I know many times we were planning to go on a fishing trip or do something. My father would get a call, have to go into surgery. We'd have to wait and wait. Finally gets out. Next day, he's real tired. He got rest. Next day, we have to wait, and finally we go on our fishing trip or whatever. But that's kind of turned me off of medicine, because I didn't want to be going to called all the time and get.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I took biology in high school, but my real interest was in science, and later became interested in physics.
Right.
More interested in physics. I took physics,
Right.
but I like chemistry more, because I liked making the fuel, and you'll see the rockets go off.
So that piece never left you?
No, never.
From the
left me.
time you were a little boy, and that excitement about that rocket and that fuel.
Yeah, that did it. Yeah,
That was it.
that was it. I just drove me to learn more about how science works and the fundamentals, and then eventually I got interested in how the fundamentals, and you get into the particles. And at first we thought they were just protons, neutrons, and electrons. But you take the proton apart, you have these quarks. You take the neutron apart, and you have different quarks. And so, it became interesting. Then, of course, there was the search for the boson, right? Peter Higgs, a scientist in England, a friend of Dirac's, predicted the Standard Model using Dirac's equation, and said there should be a boson. And nobody could find it. And so they built this thing called the Large Hadron Collider in France.
Right.
And the Alps, goes through the Alps, 27 miles around or something like that. So
Is that's the one in it's France and Switzerland?
Yeah.
That's the
Goes
same
through
one.
the- yeah, same
Yeah, I've read it. I've read science fiction books about that, the collider.
Well, they're hoping to make a black hole, small black holes.
exactly,
with that device. But they made the Higgs boson,
Okay.
and it's amazing. Because first time you're smashing these things together, and you want to find it, and it only lives for a very short time. You have to be at really high energies. So the Higgs boson is responsible for the mass of all other particles.
Okay.
So it's a part of all these other particles. So what you're trying to do is break them apart and find what the fundamental particles are. And, they're 3 across and 4 down, and these are what you have.
That's the model.
That's the model. It's relatively simple, but it's true. And so it came out of Dirac's equation, quantum mechanics. And that's how I got real interested, because I said about fundamental particle physics, I got kind of interested in that, because Dirac had all predicted a lot of these things. Well, Higgs used the equation to predict the Higgs particle. And I got to give credit to Peter Higgs. He did a great job. And he's still alive. The amazing thing is he's still alive. And I guess he got a special award for that, but he was really charged by finding the Higgs particle.
So, if I understand this correctly, I am not a physicist, but you're looking for the essential elements of the universe.
Yeah.
What
the universe is made of.
What the universe is made of.
Yeah. And then, later in life, I met with Dirac, and he got me interested in the future, how the universe is going to evolve. Because he looked at it as evolution. And he thought there might be some change in properties that we consider constants, like the gravitational constant. And so I began to look at those things, and I looked at some of his basic principles, and I got the idea that mass and space were related. Somehow can be transformed. It's just another form of the same thing. And you have to start with a hypothesis, then you have to try to test the hypothesis.
That's correct. That's what we do in science.
Yeah, so we measure the expansion of the universe, and we find out that the universe is expanding at an accelerating rate. What's causing that acceleration? Space is not, Einstein was the first to realize that space is not nothing. It can warp, and gravity waves is a disturbance in the space.
So, for those watching us today, what does this mean?
Well, it means
I'm always looking for the deeper meaning.
Okay, it means that we have a means to do time travel.
Oh.
It leads, that whole theory leads to time travel. Okay? In the book, a little bit of it's explained. She does it for a PhD.
Okay.
She has 3 PhDs in her time, and she looks very young, and she wants to adapt to the culture. The best way is to go to a place that she's been. She's a professor at the University of Hawaii in the 30th century. She wants to go to Hawaii because it feels comfortable. She loves it there. So she goes to Hawaii, and she doesn't have any records, graduate records, doesn't have any of these things. So she takes tests and gets into graduate school. She has an IQ that's higher than Einstein's. Pretty athletic woman as well. So because she, of her training, she once saved the life of this fellow called Senator Grotto. Later becomes Prime Minister of Australia. That's in the second book. Okay.
That hasn't been written yet.
Yeah, it has.
Oh, it has been written?
It's been written. It's going to be published next month.
Oh, wonderful.
March 27th.
Fantastic. And that's number 2 of the trilogy.
Number 2 of the trilogy.
Okay.
It's all done. The cover's done. Everything's done. It just has to go through proofreading, and that should be done. Then it's the last stage. You go to somebody who it's called book design.
Right.
It's really just formatting.
Okay.
They format your book for you. They charge you $1,000 or something. But that's what writers have to go through if they self-publish. If you go to a publisher, like my brother does, no problem. They take care of all the details.
I know.
But they want to pay you a small amount.
That's okay.
Yeah, it's okay.
That's really
He makes more money than I do. He's young. And he's also been very successful as a best-selling author.
So rather than giving the ending away, well, we can't because it's a trilogy. For those watching that may have a creative bug. Now, you come from the world of science, but you've always been inspired by literature and writing. What can you tell our folks watching us? Because, we may have children and young folks watching us, or maybe a housewife. Who knows who's watching? But we all come, as writers, we all come from a certain place in our spirit or our soul that causes us to want to express something deep inside of us.
Yeah, and it's fun to write. So I think, for me, it's just fun. I love science, and writing about science fiction is just my imagination of what the future's going to be. I may not be right. I don't think anybody can be 100% right.
No, of course not.
But I'm trying to project something that we have to learn how to deal with, which our children, our offspring, eventually are going to live much longer. Okay? I think
Did you say like 900 years?
800 years.
800 years.
Longer by the 30th century.
Okay.
But it's going to be a gradual process.
All right.
Within 20 years, I think the girl will be born who will live 150 years.
Do you really believe that?
Yeah.
Wow.
So just minor changes that are going to happen, and probably won't be legal in the United States, but will be done somewhere else.
Wow.
And they will do things that will increase lifespan, and they've done it with animals, so we can do it with humans. And I don't want to get into all the things, but there's a protein called NAD.
NAD?
D, that's a small name for it, big long word.
Yeah.
And you took that in mice that were older, and we made them younger. We made them, they look just like the young mice. Okay, this is going to be something that will be done very soon in
Can I
humans.
buy this for me?
Probably, if you go to the chemical store, that probably you could find it on the internet. Probably.
NAD?
NAD.
Yeah, and it'll make me younger.
Made mice younger. I don't know what it's going to do to humans. Hasn't been tested on humans yet. They're going to first go to monkeys, and then later maybe to primates, apes. But it hasn't been done. But if that's done, then they'll do it on humans.
Okay.
So it takes a while.
So, to finish up, I know there's just a huge amount of information here. What would you like to leave our viewers knowing about you, your writing, the universe? This is your time.
Okay, it's my time. Well,
It's your time.
Yeah, I think this. I've also written book 3, by the way. It's written, but it's not been edited. Okay, so as soon as this one gets published, I'll have the other one edited.
Lovely. And by the way, we're going to put it all on the screen and how everybody can get a copy of a 30th Century Escape. Fascinating read.
The best place is Amazon, because right now I have a relationship with Amazon.
Let me put
where
it
they
up
have
again on the screen.
Yeah.
And we'll flash it on the screen with all of that.
And Amazon has an exclusive. They have.
Okay, so you can get it from Amazon. It's how much?
Yeah, it's $2.99 for the ebook and $14.99 for the paperback.
Folks, you can afford it. It's a great read, and I think that if you want to expand your mind and get out of the everyday, I think it's definitely worth taking a look at 30th Century Escape by Dr. Mark Kingston Levin.
Oh, thank you very much. I really appreciated the opportunity to talk about science in the book. And one thing about this character, she does have some psychological problems. She goes into deep depression.
Depression.
Depression, yeah.
Do they have psychiatrists and all of that to help
Well,
them? They have
she's
chemicals?
She goes back to the 21st century, March 2015. And she has to survive on that island by herself till 4.5 months, when this airplane, amphibious airplane, actually it's a Albatross, it's an amphibious aircraft, comes. They're going to do research on this island and take samples and send it all back to France. So it's about kind of some of the stuff I did when I had that company. So I write what I know about.
Right. We all write what we know about.
I have to.
Or fantasize about.
Or fantasize. Yeah, I mean the future we don't know. Of course, it's all fantasy, but it's based on science. So that's what we call it, science fiction.
Yeah.
Everything I do there is based on some real scientific theory, which deals with the expansion of the universe, which led to time travel. I think you'll see people talking about, gravity waves are distortions in space-time. So space is something, and if there are those waves, space cannot. It has energy in it. It can be converted, right? So you can't get something from nothing.
Right.
So something has to make space.
Right.
In my opinion, okay? And it might be black holes, and maybe supernovas. It's got to be something. Could be collisions of neutron stars. All 3 of them could be. So something makes space because we're expanding at such a rapid rate. I think that rate won't continue forever, or everything would fly apart. I think what's going to happen is we'll end up with a universe of all black holes. They will start merging and merging and merging. And some point, they'll reach a critical mass, and will make a white hole, become a white hole. A white hole is the opposite of a black hole. The Big Bang was a white hole.
And that will reveal everything.
Well, it will create another universe.
Yes, it will.
Yeah, create another universe.
Fantastic.
And maybe we'll get more than one out of this universe. And maybe there'll be much more universes. But I don't know what size, and I'm trying to figure that out. I don't have Dirac anymore. He passed away. if I had somebody like him, I do, one of his students, Walter Penrose, is now Sir Walter Penrose. He came out with a theory called conformal cosmology, conformal cyclic cosmology, which means there's no beginning, there's no end, it runs in cycles. It's compatible somewhat with my theory.
Right.
I call it J theory, okay? And partly because Jennifer, it starts with a J. So you have to pick something, some name, you know, M for membrane, and you know, the universe started when two membranes collide.
Right.
It's kind of the string theory.
Yeah.
And string theory is very good, and superstring theory, and M theory. You know, as many scientists as you have, you probably have different theories, okay? But a lot of people are working on string theory. It's very popular now. And there's quantum loop and theory, which is really trying to... Einstein's equations have a problem because they go to infinity. Nothing can be infinitely small because quantum mechanics tells us you can't get smaller than a Planck's length. That's 10 to the minus 35 centimeters. It's really small, okay? Can't get smaller than that. So you can't go to infinity. Yeah. So you have to apply quantum mechanics to Einstein's theory.
To figure it out.
To figure it out.
Yeah.
Now, Einstein called that the theory of everything or the unified field theory. And he tried to do it, and he didn't do it, okay? And then other people have tried, thousands. Schrodinger tried it. I mean, everybody tried to get, well, they want a unified field theory. It's very difficult because this theory of gravity, relativity, doesn't fit. No matter what you do. Well, I think someday it will, by the 30th century, certainly. But right now, it's a big problem in physics, trying to come up with a theory of everything. String theory is the best possible chance, I think, or superstring theory.
Right.
Yeah.
So, Mark, we're not going to figure it all out today,
No, we're not.
but we certainly have given it a nice shot.
Yeah. Well, I think the question is the best and most interesting part of what makes me interested in science. If those questions were all answered, it wouldn't be interesting.
That's correct.
Okay, it's the beauty of every time you discover something like gravity waves, it leads to other things.
Absolutely does.
Yeah, and so and also there's something called wormholes. And through the wormhole with Morgan Freeman, you know, he had a great, but wormholes, if you move one end of the wormhole, you have a time machine. Okay, because the physics all goes to that, and how you can create these things in a small field.
Right.
And that's how you put a small little like vehicle in there, and you go into the future.
Wow. Well,
Yep.
again, I want to
Yeah,
thank you so
Yeah,
much for
thank
being
you.
here today and
Yeah.
for being our guest. And I've learned a lot, and I really thank you. And I want to thank all of you for watching and being here. And if you have any questions, certainly you're more than welcome to send them on to us. We'll flash the information on the screen, and we look forward to hearing from you again, seeing you soon. If you like this video, please sign up and subscribe. We look forward to being part of our